Hi, my name is Abrah Arneson, and I'm a clinical herbal therapist in practice in Ottawa, Ontario. Uh, Currently, I'm in my home in the beautiful Gatineau Hills, and I've been in practice for 20 years now, and I've learned a few things about plant medicine. And I think one of the most foundational understandings I've developed in plant medicine is that herbal medicine is actually a three-way relationship, and it's the relationship between plants, multicellular organisms, such as the human being, and microorganisms, such as bacteria, viruses, protozoa. And it appears to me that plants primarily are the mediator between the microorganisms and the multicellular organisms. And when there is harmony in those three relationships between plants, microorganisms, and human beings or multicellular organisms, there is well being everywhere, a sense of well being, a sense of support, a sense of harmony everywhere. And this is my personal definition of holistic medicine. It is the medicine of relationships. So instead of looking at singular organs or singular cells or cell receptors or neurotransmitters or hormones, um, I want to look at the relationship between all of those things and how plants support those harmonious relationships that create a sense of well-being. So, shall we begin? Just give me 1 second. Remember how to do this. Okay, so many traditional forms of herbal medicine or medicine have a sense of, they describe their medicine in terms of a tree. And I love this metaphor. So, with trees, there's roots that we can't see, but those roots are interacting with the environment of the soil and how the health and wellness and what's going on in the soil has a profound effect on the health of the tree. The body is often seen as the tree, the trunk of the tree. And then the branches are all the different ways that body mind complex is interacting with the environment. And then the leaves are all the different ways there's health or illness presenting itself in that being, in that living being. So there's this, I like the image of the tree because it offers us a much bigger picture of a compilation of different causes, different circumstances, a context for health, as opposed to a singular root cause or a singular change or one thing you have to get rid of, or this is exactly what's wrong with you. When we talk about health in terms of a tree, we're talking about health in context to the environment, to the genetics, to the soil, to the food, to the water, to the air, to the sunlight, to the moonlight. We're talking about health in context to the environment. And this is a really important point when we're talking about holistic medicine and not getting too hung up on finding root causes. Sometimes a lot of time is wasted looking for the root cause of something when simple changes can create a better sense of well-being. So today we're going to look at the liver, and the liver is to live. That's what it means, liver, to live. Every plant that goes in your mouth, everything that goes in your mouth is affects the liver affects. Therefore, I think of every plant as a liver herb. This is, I remember when I was in school and we went and did some cadaver anatomy, and I saw my first human liver. I had seen calf livers and cow livers, but I'd never seen a human liver. And it looked nothing at all like this. It was a different shape. They were in different places in the body. Some were really thin and kind of hard looking. Others were quite bloated. So when you're thinking of the liver, try not to just allow this kind of plastic model of the liver affect you. Think of the liver as a living intelligence within the body, that it changes its shape according to its health and its non-health. I like to think of the liver as the mother in the body, and it's a bit yeah. So I so yeah, I think of the liver as the mother in the body. So think of it this way. So mom has a couple of kids, everything's going along really well. She's, she works, but food gets made every day, recycled food, leftovers get used, new food comes in, what needs to be thrown out gets thrown out. The recycling is correct. The tin cans and plastic is in the recycling bin, and the garbage is in the garbage, and then the biodegradable carrot peels and potato peels are in the compost. So everything is running fairly smoothly. And then all of a sudden, and that's essentially the liver's job, is to keep your kitchen sorted out. So the recycling gets recycled, the garbage gets thrown out, there's some composting that's used up to create different kinds of soil, the leftovers get pulled out and recooked, and new food enters into the well-being of all your family. So something happens, mom has some extra work deadlines. Maybe one of the kids gets a bit sick. Maybe there's some kind of need for her in another place. And all of a sudden, what do you find is, the leftovers in the fridge kind of get pushed to the back and start becoming these like kind of gory science experiments. Vegetables aren't being used up in the vegetable tray and they're getting a bit slimy. There's garbage in the recycling and recycling in the garbage, and the compost isn't making it out on time, and bugs are kind of starting to fly around. The whole kitchen kind of falls apart when mom gets really busy. And that's what happens to the liver. When the liver gets overwhelmed, it can't process everything in the right way. And it needs care and attention and rest to be able to do the work it does, just as mom needs lots of care and rest to be able to do the work she does for her family's well-being. Or maybe it's a dad. So I like to look at patterns in nature. Nature is very economical, doesn't try new things particularly easily, it's very conservative that way. And when something works, nature just keeps working it. So I think the liver is a little bit like mycelium, in that the mycelium is the threads of fungi that move out through the forest floor or through the meadow floor, even through jungles. They're everywhere, and are responsible for delivering nutrients to the roots of plants and for taking away toxins. And it's all run by enzymes, and it has this relationship with bacteria and viruses. It's the big part of the immune system of the forest or the planet. And the liver runs by enzymes. It's all about enzymes, and we're going to talk a little bit more about enzymes, but it also is a big part of our immune system, in that it filters out everything we put in our mouth, and it has a huge role in the immune system. So I think of some of the functions of the mycelium and the functions of the liver in animal bodies are very similar. And just on that topic, the reishi mushroom is a hepatoprotectant. So a hepatoprotectant is a herb that, or a mushroom that protects the liver. A hepatic is liver, so a hepatoprotectant is something that protects the liver. These aren't necessarily plants or mushrooms that enhance detoxification processes, but these are plants and mushrooms that protect the cell membranes within the liver. And those membranes can be cell membranes of hepatocytes. That's what a liver cell is called, a hepatocyte. Or it could be protecting the cell membranes of mitochondria. Those are the little engines that fire up the energy for the liver cells to do their work. Or it could be protecting the cell membranes of the nucleus, which carries the DNA information inside each liver cell. And it's really important. And I'm going to talk more about this a little bit later on. But Ganoderma increases glutathione, and glutathione is an antioxidant that the liver makes to protect itself. And that's one of the things reishi mushrooms do. So they're really great protector for the liver. I think this red color is a bit of a signature for the liver. A signature is when a plant or a mushroom presents something that looks like something else in the body. That's a signature. So that red color is associated with blood, and the liver is a bloody place. One of the things you'll see in clinic is people will bring in their blood work and you'll see high liver enzymes, and reishi mushrooms will help lower those liver enzymes. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. So every living creature on this planet has a liver, not just humans. So reptiles, amphibians, birds, fish, mammal, octopi, all have livers. And what we kind of like when we start talking about the liver, we think, oh, our liver. But the liver is like an intelligence, a kind of intelligence the planet uses to support life. And that's a really important kind of lens to be looking at the body through, that each organ has its own intelligence and is found across the planet in all life forms. They're not just for human beings. And in all life forms, the liver essentially has similar functions. And within the body, the liver has many, many relationships. So I find it very useful to go back through time and look at how people in different cultures and in different times saw the body and understood plant medicine. Plant medicine has been the primary medicine for human beings since the very beginning, before memory. So how have people use these plants? How have they seen them? What kind of language have they used to talk about them? And then because of that, you're putting plants in people's bodies to help make people feel better. Like, how did they see the body? So Galen is this really interesting guy. He was, I'm pretty sure he was Roman. And sometimes Galen's is like seriously like crazy stuff. Like, if a menstruating woman goes near a pregnant mare, she'll miscarry. Or if a menstruating woman goes towards a hive of bees, the bees will flee the hive, that kind of stuff. Like, he says a lot of crazy stuff. And I find him quite misogynistic, actually. But he also, he's a reflection of his time, and it's interesting. His observations of the body, to a certain extent, are just with his senses, what he saw. And this is how he described the liver. Now, why is the stomach surrounded by the liver? So the liver is here and the stomach is here. This is the small intestine. Why is the stomach surrounded by the liver? Is it in order that the liver may warm it and it may in turn warm the food? This indeed is the very reason why it is closely glassed by the lobes of the liver, as if by fingers. So there is a profound relationship between the stomach and the liver, and it's not necessarily because the liver is heating the stomach. That idea that the stomach cooks food is a very old idea, and is found in Ayurvedic medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, traditional Western medicine. And in traditional Western medicine, the idea is that the liver provides the source of heat for the stomach to cook the food, which clearly is incorrect. However, there is something in this statement that is a grain of truth. The liver filters blood. It's a very bloody place. Think of like when you go to the grocery store and you see the calf liver. It is bloody. It looks like congealed blood. The blood carries the heat in the body. If the liver is congested, if the liver isn't able to process the blood in a good way, if the blood is not flowing through the liver in an efficient way, the blood backs up and the liver becomes hot with blood. It becomes a hot, bloody place, the liver. And that heat in turn influences everything around it. So hot liver will influence the lungs, and the lungs are a very moist place. And if the liver is hot, it's going to start drying out those lungs if it goes on for too long. And it will also start drying out the stomach. So you might find you're having more bloating, more challenges with digestive upset, and a weak digestion. So the liver sits right underneath the diaphragm. So in this picture, here is the diaphragm. And here is the liver, and here are the lungs. And there's actually two lobes in the right lung, and two lobes and three lobes in the left lung. And the two lobes, the right lung is missing a lobe to accommodate for the size of the liver sitting right beneath it. So if the liver is swollen, or the liver has shifted, or the liver is really hard, there may be challenges breathing because it's pushing against the diaphragm, and the diaphragm can't relax and open. And every time you breathe deeply, you're massaging the liver with the diaphragm. There's movement in the liver that creates massage. Massage is nice. The liver has bile. Bile is such a complicated substance. Often we think of bile as carrying the toxins out of the body, but bile is also our natural laxative. It triggers peristalsis. That's the wavy movement through the small and large intestine that moves through the large and small intestine to process the food and eventually eliminate stool. Bile is also breaks down fat soluble vitamins and the fat that we absorb. So if you're eating pizza with extra cheese, the bile is working really hard at breaking down all those fatty molecules for absorption. And the other thing bile is, it's our natural antimicrobial. It manages the microbiome in the large and small intestine. And it's really interesting because there's a class of bacteria in the large intestine called bacteroids. Here's the word here. And Bacteroid fragilis is the largest colony of bacteria in the large intestine. And what these guys do is they break up carbohydrates and prepare them for absorption. And if there's a bacterial imbalance in the large intestine, often there's a challenge with carbohydrate metabolism. And that challenge can go as far as like type 2 diabetes. And it's shown that if there's a healthy colony of bacteroids in the large intestine, there's a lot less likely chance of developing type 2 diabetes. So what happens is bile is our natural antimicrobial, and these bacteroids are immune to bile. They will take the bile in and then spit it back out. The bile does not kill them like it might kill candida or E. coli. It doesn't touch them. They're immune to it. We have this commensal relationship where we let it be. Now, these plants that I have up here, Oregon grape, Mahonia aquifolium, or Celandine, Chelidonian majoris, which I use a lot in my practice, these plants have a constituent called berberine. Berberine is an alkaloid that is often used to help rebalance the microbiome of the bowel and the small intestine. Very important. The interesting thing is with this constituent berberine found in these two plants that are considered liver herbs, are very cleansing for the liver, but also carry this berberine that balances the microbiome in the gut, is the bacteroids don't react to it. And what happens is the berberine will kill off unwanted bacteria or bacterial overgrowth. And as it does that, the bacteroids will grow. They'll move, and the colony will become stronger, and actually improves carbohydrate metabolism at this point, which in the end supports blood sugar balance. So it's really, I want to tell that story because of this really beautiful interconnected relationship between our health, our liver, which produces the bile, and the plants that can mimic the bile to a certain extent, the microorganisms, our ability to absorb food, and illness and health. And it's really important to come to those kind of understandings that we're working in relationship here, and not just like, oh, this herb is for diabetes or this herb is for balancing the microbiome. It's much more complex than that. The other really interesting relationship between the liver and another body organ is the lymph, which isn't really an organ, it's a system. And the lymph is like something, a part of the body that herbal medicine shines at supporting. There's so many great herbal lymphatics, including Oregon grape that I just was in the previous slide. So what happens is the lymph, which is a fluid that goes through these little vessels, and there's lymph nodes where all the lymph is processed and looked at and decided whether they're carrying unwanted microbes or not. And if so, then it activates white blood cells. We're going to do a whole class on lymph, so I'm not going to go into too much detail here. But the most important thing is that ultimately the lymph ends up in the liver. And the lymph is really like the cleaning lady of our body. So if the liver is congested and one is using lymphatic herbs to move the lymph, to clean up the interstitial fluid of the body, which we're going to talk about that in more depth in the lymphatic video, you can make people really sick. And I have seen this primarily with people with chronic infections such as Lyme disease. And often when you're working with people with chronic illness, the first thing to do is strengthen the liver with the hepatoprotectants like reishi, because it's going to have to filter out all the toxins, all the microbes that are unwanted, as well as provide nourishment for the rest of the body. So, if someone is not well, the first place to start, a lot of people say, is the digestion. I think is the liver, because if the liver isn't happy, no one's happy. So, just this is another image of the liver, and this is from above. So here's the liver. Look how big it is. Here's the spine. I would guess this is the stomach, and this might be the pancreas or the spleen. In any case, everything you put in your mouth passes through the liver, including plants. There's over 500 functions of the liver. This includes filtration. It filters your blood. It filters your lymph. Storage. It stores amino acids. This is amino acids are your basis of all protein, and protein is so important for health. All those enzymes that we're going to talk about in a little bit, they're made with protein, as are your hormones, as are your muscles, a lot of your connective tissue, your immune cells, your blood. It's all made with protein. And so if there's not enough protein, there's trouble. I'm just saying. Iron, it stores iron, copper, fat soluble vitamins, B12. Protein, it does all it makes your amino acids, which are the pieces of protein that you need to run your body. It nourishes the blood, that's the proteins. And it also gathers all the food from the small intestine and filters it, and then sends it into the blood for general circulation to go out to all the cells in your body. Big immune action in the filtration process. A lot of lymph, also lymph nodes around the liver, checking everything out. Blood sugars, it stores sugars, particularly for when you're sleeping. The liver gently releases sugars so that your body doesn't go energy deficient in your brain. Often your brain does not store sugars. I often think that the liver is storing sugar for your brain when you're sleeping. One of the things when you're working with folks and they have insomnia and they're waking up at night, sometimes it's a hypoglycemic response, and their liver isn't storing sugars in a good way, or their liver needs more support. If you have them have a little snack before bed, just a small snack, like a little bit of cheese and crackers, or maybe some yogurt, or maybe some peanut butter on toast, something like that, they'll sleep better through the night because their brain has adequate sugar to make it through the night. And the liver is, sometimes I think of it as part of the endocrine system, which is our hormonal balancing system. And because it makes the hormones, it takes the hormones apart, it recycles bits of hormones. It's very tied into the endocrine system. So I love this image of the liver. Obviously, it's abstract, but I just love the symmetry of it. So let's just talk about what the inside of the liver looks like for a little bit. So here, let's say here and here and here and here and here, these are the hepatic portal vein. So this is the blood that's coming from the small and large intestine into the liver. This is the blood that's carrying the nutrients you have eaten and has been digested in the stomach, passed through the small intestine into your blood. It's a vein, so it's not high in oxygen, and it's going into the liver to be filtered before it's put into the central vein. And the central vein is a vein that rises out of the liver, carries all that filtered, nutrient-rich blood up into the heart, up and into the aorta, where it's dumped into the heart to be oxygenated. First it goes into the lungs, and then it goes into the heart to be sent through the body carrying nutrients. This is like a really complicated system. And then there's also hepatic arteries. So this artery here, these are little arteries, would be for delivering oxygenated blood to the liver, delivering blood that is nutrient for the liver to use. And lastly, there's bile ducts, and this is actually bile ducts here, and this is where the bile is like the toxins, endotoxins, they're called, that are produced through all the metabolism and catabolism that the liver does with the nutrients that come into it for processing. And the bile carries that out. So, and these little guys here are all the liver cells. So it's a very orderly place. The liver is very symmetrical and orderly. And I love it too, because like if this lobule or this area here becomes damaged, there's a protective area. This is a protective membrane that protects the rest of the liver from being challenged. So the liver is a place that has to deal with a lot of toxins. So here's another image of the liver. This time it's microscopic again, and it's dyed. And right here is an image of milk thistle leaf. And I just love comparing these two images. They look so similar to me. So again, this is some information about how the liver is put together. So as I said before, the liver is in the right side of the body, just under the diaphragm. The right lung is smaller to accommodate for the size of the liver than the left lung. The liver has 2 lobes, and each is made up of 8 sections, and each section has about 1,000 lobules with ducts and blood vessels coming in and out of it. And all the bile is carried to the liver. So it's a very organized environment, and it's a very aware of its role in terms of keeping things in sections, so that if there's damage in one area, another area can pick up the work. And it's hard for damage to spread through the liver. It takes a lot of effort to destroy a liver. And also the liver can regenerate, which is an interesting component. I always think of it as like a reptilian intelligence in that way. Okay, so milk thistle is also a hepatoprotectant. Thistles generally have effects on the liver. Milk thistle very specifically is a hepatoprotectant, and it's taken to protect the liver. And you know you have a milk thistle because there's a milk stain on the leaf. That's how you know you have milk thistle. It's several milk thistles have like the purpley kind of flower that milk thistle carries. You know you have milk thistle by the milk stain on the leaf. And it's the seed that we currently use in herbal medicine. However, in the past, the leaf has been used quite a bit. Okay, so we're gonna shift to the Middle East. In the Middle East, there's a great tradition of herbal medicine called the tip. And Avincia is was a genius healer, doctor, mathematician, geometry, reading the stars, and also a great herbalist. And so he said that physicians considered the liver as the seat of the manufacture of the dense parts of the humors. So this is humoral medicine. And we could get into the history of medicine here a little bit, but I'm going to sort of jump over it. Humoral medicine we're generally understand it is coming out of Greece, Aristotle. And it was the medicine that was practiced in Europe for thousands of years. So humoral medicine is based on the elements. I personally believe that having an understanding of the elements in relationship to the plants and the body is essential to practice herbal medicine in a good way. That's my personal belief. Humoral medicine, when we start talking about the elements in herbal medicine, we're talking about the landscape of the body. We're not so much talking about this specific organ or this particular disease or this particular state of health. What we're talking about is, what is the landscape of the body like? Is it boggy? Is it like a desert? Is it like a old growth forest? What is the balance of the elements? And the elements are earth, water, fire, and air in this particular system. There's different systems that look at them slightly differently, but this system I really like because it's super simple. So in humoral medicine, not sure why that's there. Okay. In humoral medicine, we have hot and cold as balancing of the fire element. And the fire element is up here, yellow bile. Then we have dry and wet, and that's the balancing of the water element. Super hot is yellow bile. Super cold and dry is black bile. This is not a great state to be in, cold and dry. It's actually considered the most, when we find a cold, dry body, it's considered the most difficult state to bring back into balance. This state, a yellow bile, high fire, is very volatile, as fire is. It runs hot, and it tends to be somewhat drying because a lot of heat dries out the tissues. This is hot and wet, like blood is hot and wet. This is it's a challenging state. It's to recognize in some ways, because it's often people who are sanguine, that's what they're called, are very jovial, and they like to have parties, and they're very friendly, and they're outgoing, and they're fun. And so we don't necessarily see this as a challenge. However, their blood can become too hot, and then they have problems. So a lot of heart disease here. These characters tend to kind of flare up a little bit too much. They might be our hotheads. And the black bile, it tends to be more towards depression, melancholy, it's called. Melancholy is the state of the philosopher. So we have to be careful about like that, using the term melancholy in the same way as we use the term depression. But out of balance, black bile would be a deep depression, like a chronic depression, clinical depression. And then phlegm is the watery type. And these type really hold to tradition. They tend to have a lot of like puffiness. Water collects, it's sticky, it's very puffy. Often there's bacterial imbalances in the water type, and you just have to think of like bogs and swamps. That will give you a sense of the phlegmatic personality. They're very traditional, hard to move, but at the same time, they have a lot of, uh, you know, emotionality, like sentimentality type thing when they're out of balance, too much sentimentality, hormonal medicine. And so traditional herbalists felt that these four substances that affect our mind, our spirit, and our body were all produced by the liver. And remember, the liver is to live, and the balancing of the elements was first you have to go to the liver and balance the liver to be able to have a balance of elements in the body. So here's the elements at play. We're going to talk a lot about the elements through this series of classes. So a few other hepatoprotectants that help balance the elements in the liver, which lead to balance of the elements in the body. Licorice, really important herb in herbal medicine. An extremely complex herb. Takes a long time to understand this plant and how to use it in a good way. I find it's a very low dose plant. It has a powerful antioxidant effect on the liver, again, protecting the cell membranes, protecting the membranes of the mitochondria and the nucleus of the cell of the hepatocytes. It also has some laxative qualities, so it supports the release of bile. A really complex plant. Schisandra is one of my favorite hepatoprotectants. It's a berry. It comes to us from traditional Chinese medicine. I've been growing Schisandra for 5 years now, and I had 2 berries this summer, so I was super happy. So next year, let's hope we get a whole pile. This plant is probably one of my favorite adaptogens. Adaptogens are often said, oh, they help us adjust to stress. But I find this herb is really a healer for the liver. Let's talk about mitochondria, because this is where I believe Schisandra works. Schisandra, as you can see, is bright red berries, a very sour taste. In Chinese medicine, they say it has the 5 tastes, but definitely the sour taste is the dominant taste. When we taste something sour in a herb, what we're tasting is flavonoids. And flavonoids are antioxidants. They pick up loose oxygen molecules and then release them back, and pick them up and release them back. And Schisandra is really, really high in antioxidants. This is really important for healthy mitochondria. So mitochondria is a bacterial ancestral intelligence inside our cells that knows how to use oxygen to create energy. Just that's like super simple explanation. All the activities of our body, all the activities of every organ, every tissue, and every cell is driven by the energy that the mitochondria make. If the mitochondria in the cells are not healthy, the organ is not healthy. If the organ isn't healthy, there'll be ill health in the body. It's very wise as a herbalist to consider how much energy an organ is producing. The liver, because it's so essential to the health of the whole body, and has all these functions, from making hormones to making proteins to storing sugars to filtering food, filtering blood. 25% of every liver cell is made up of mitochondria. Only the brain and the heart have more mitochondria, and also oocytes, the eggs released from the ovaries. Over 2,000 mitochondria in each oocyte. But anyways, in the liver, 25% of every liver cell, hepatocyte, is made up of mitochondria. And all that mitochondria is creating energy for that liver cell to do its work. Okay, so the mitochondria is burning oxygen for the liver cell to do the work. So you want to think of oxygen as the fire element. Think about that oxygen container with the fire symbol on it in flammable, and think about your Thanksgiving dinner when Uncle George and Aunt Edna come, and Uncle George is on oxygen and lights up a cigarette, and Aunt Edna's like, George, I told you not to smoke with your oxygen on, because kaboom, oxygen is highly flammable. So when it's loose in the body, what often happens with oxygen, it gets attached to something else, often a hydrogen molecule. And when it's attached to a hydrogen molecule, it becomes water, not flammable. However, because the mitochondria burns loose oxygen molecules, there's constantly loose oxygen molecules flying around inside each mitochondria, inside each cell. That's a lot of loose oxygen molecules. You can think of it, loose oxygen molecules. I'm going to tell a personal story. So, when I was younger, in my wilder days, I used to, go out in my mom's car, and like we would have a little party in her car, and inevitably there'd be a little spark come off something we were smoking, and it would fly off and burn a hole in her car seat. Not good. That's kind of what's happening with oxygen molecules. They're flying off and burning little holes in the membranes of the mitochondria. And if they fly out a little hole that's already been burned, it will start burning little holes in the nucleus, in the membrane surrounding the nucleus of the cell, which can cause DNA disruption, which can lead to cancer. Or it might disrupt the membrane of the cell, which is disastrous as well. Basically, too many, the cell dies. You have cellular death. So it's really important to catch those loose oxygen molecules, and that's what flavonoids do, is they have the ability to catch them, attach them to their own molecules, and then they re-release them back into the environment for the mitochondria to pick them up and turn them into energy. The loose oxygen molecules are called free radicals, and the flavonoids help gather them up. It's not like they hold on to them forever. They release them back so that they can be used for energy. They don't, so it's kind of like a pulsation. The oxygen's released, the flavonoids picks them up, and then the flavonoids release them, the mitochondria picks them up, uses them for energy, and the process keeps going like that. A plant like Schisandra is super high in flavonoids, powerful antioxidant, protects the liver, helps the liver make energy. Yeah, so just one more thing about the mitochondria and the liver is when we sleep, that is when the liver does its repair work. So you want to think about, like, during the day, we're eating and drinking and, having a life, and everything we're putting in our mouth is getting processed. If we're cycling, it's cycling all our hormones, it's taking care of all the lymph that's coming in with all the bacteria or dead cell bits, cleaning up everything, right? It's very busy during the day. And to do all that work, the mitochondria are just firing off oxygen to make energy. And the mitochondria in that process get damaged. When we go to sleep, that's when the mitochondria do a self-repair work, and bits of mitochondria that aren't working well either get taken apart and released out of the body, or they're repaired if they can be repaired. But when we're sleeping, that's when that work comes in. And that's like melatonin, the hormone that helps us sleep. It's a powerful antioxidant, and that's part of the work the melatonin is doing, that mitochondrial repair in our liver. So If we're asking the liver to do more work when we're sleeping, so for example, say it's Saturday night and you have some friends over and you're drinking some beer, and then around 11 you decide to order pizza and you eat the pizza, and then you drink some more beer and you go to bed and you wake up in the morning and you feel yucky. That's because your liver had all this stuff coming in while it was trying to self-repair, and it was not able to process the alcohol, it was not able to process the fat and the pizza and your body, and you're all backed up, and it's going to take 24 hours to recover. So just keep that in mind. Like, sleep is when your liver repairs itself, and if it's not able to do that, every day that it's not strong, you're going to is a day you're going to move closer and closer to chronic ill health. And it's so interesting that many herbs used for sleep have a powerful effect on the liver, such as hops. And hops is not a liver protectant. What it does is it supports the release of bile, and it relaxes um the yeah, it's hard to, you know, it's hard to describe plants because they don't necessarily fit our paradigm of medicine. So hops relaxes bile ducts. It relaxes what I like to say, the middle of the body. So it relaxes the stomach. It relaxes the small intestine. It moves um, the heat generated by the liver down. So it releases heat in a downward way as opposed to it rising and waking people up. So many of the herbs we use for sleep have this effect on the liver, releasing the heat, releasing the tension in the liver. Skullcap is another one, hops, St. John's wort. All these plants used to help people sleep are also plants that support the liver in releasing toxins. Milk thistle, we talked about. It's the seed of milk thistle that we use currently as an antioxidant for the liver. A really classic one is harm reduction for alcoholics, using milk thistle seed to support an alcoholic's liver. That's a really great way to use milk thistle. Capsules work really well with milk thistle. Yeah, and then last, one more place we want to talk is the liver and the kidney. So there's a profound relationship between the liver and the kidney. And the kidney basically is responsible for releasing the waste products from protein metabolism. That's what it does. If there's too much protein that the liver can't process as well, it sends it over to the kidney, and the kidney starts releasing it in your urine, which is problem. If the liver is challenged, eventually the kidney will be challenged as well because of their relationship with protein metabolism. I love the fact that a plant like milk thistle not only protects the liver, but it also protects the kidney. If someone has a weak kidney, you can support the kidneys with milk thistle while also supporting the liver. It's very wise if someone has weak kidney or early stage kidney failure to support the liver, and using plants like milk thistle will support the two of them in a good way. Another really great plant that way is astragalus. So let's take a little side trip to medical astrology. And medical astrology is like another language we can use to talk about the body and illness and plants and their relationships. It's yeah, let's think of it as another language, not necessarily um, some planet in the sky, but the vibration of that planet happening in the body or happening in plants. Okay. So in medical astrology, the liver is ruled by Jupiter, and it's Jupiter rules diseases of the excess. So Jupiter is like the big planet out there in our solar system, and it's considered the planet of benevolence. It's very generous planet. It's a good luck planet. When it, when you have a nice Jupiter transit, you're kind of looking for those lucky moments, those synchronistic moments that's going to bring you good fortune. Okay. So think of the liver like that. It is a very generous organ. It's benevolent. It like filters everything and then sends it out to be dispersed throughout the body. That's what the liver does. And many one of the roles of the planet Jupiter in our solar system is its gravitational field is so big that a lot of when bits of space debris, like bits and pieces of asteroids, are coming in, barreling towards our little tiny planet. Um, they hit Jupiter's gravitational field and get bounce back into outer space. So you can kind of think of that role of protector and generating benevolence as a role for the liver. That's how you would think about that. However, too much of a good thing causes problems. And that's where we get to diseases of excess for the liver. And in the old days, like, and I mean like way back, like the 1400s, the kings would be eating all that rich food and drinking all that wine and all that beer and all that mead, and yeah, they get gout, and that was a disease of excess. Too much of a good thing. The poor peasant was too busy working and trying to get enough food to sustain themselves through the winter. They generally did not get the diseases of excess. This is we're talking about the ultra wealthy that get the diseases of excess. So, what are some of the plants that we would use for diseases of excess to support the liver so that it doesn't blow up basically from too much of a good thing? So we get licorice again, astragalus, which I mentioned, and Schisandra. A really interesting plant that is often not considered a liver plant is lemon balm. And lemon balm is a cooling plant. Diseases of excess tend to be hot, a lot of blood. So we use plants like lemon balm to cool off the liver, cool off the stomach, cool off the small intestine, cool down the head, cool down the heart. It's a really lovely, soft, gentle plant to calm down greed. So there's this English botanist named Nicholas Culpeper. He wrote a number of very famous herbals. Definitely recommend taking a look at him. I have a little bit of an issue with Culpeper in that he wrote a lot about plants for women during labor, and he actually never attended a single birth. And all that knowledge he gained from midwives and female herbalists. And I often wonder how much of his knowledge was gathered from women without crediting them. So, any case, yeah. So for the weak stomach, create merry, remove obstructions in the brain and melancholy vapors. So that like heavy, too much food, heaviness, weightiness, Yeah, melancholy, hung over, lemon balm. Another really interesting plant ruled by Jupiter is dandelion root and dandelion leaf. And this is your classic liver herb, right? You think, oh, I got to do a liver cleanse, dandelion root. And yeah, so let's just talk about what that cleansing looks like. So in the liver, there are two primary detoxification pathways. Yeah. And they're run by enzymes, back to these enzymes. And enzymes are little kind of protein molecules that change substance from one thing to something else. Okay. You can think of enzymes like doormen or off ramps on the highway. What these two phases of detoxifications are basically doing is they're changing toxins from one kind of substance into another kind of substance so that they can be eliminated either through the kidneys or through stool. Okay. Uh, some substances, if there's too much backup, they're not able to take care of all the substances, particularly fat soluble substances. They get stored in fatty tissue. So that's why people develop fatty liver if there's too many toxins coming into the body and the liver can't handle them. Or the toxins might get stored in the fat on your butt or the fat on your thighs. The other place toxins get stored is in your brain. Your brain is mostly fat. Your nervous system loves fat because it's good installation for all those little electrical impulses moving through your brain. So it gets stored in fat. And just a side, THC gets stored in fat when we have a lot of THC, when we're using a lot of cannabis. And it gets stored in your head, in your brain. And in traditional medicine from India, which is where our cannabis originally came from, a plant called holy basil is used to clear toxins out of the fat in the brain, in particular THC. Just saying. Okay, so you've got two phases of detoxification that all toxins run through, and it's run by livers, and your enzymes are your doormen or your off ramps. So here we have a situation where we have two pathways and they're really crowded, and we have traffic. If there's too much for your liver to process, so say you're a cycling, you have a cycling body, you're just about to bleed, and your liver is taking apart all the hormones involved in that cycling, and you go out and party and have a binge drinking night, your liver is completely overwhelmed with not only all the hormones that need to be processed, as well as your daily activities, but also the alcohol. And so you get everything backed up. And these two phases of detoxification can't get off the off ramp. And so things just keep cycling through the body until this traffic jam clears up, and what needs to get off the off ramp gets off the off ramp. And you have this. So if you're on a lot of pharmaceutical meds, this can cause a lot of congestion. Poor diet, a lot of processed food. Yeah, lots of things can cause this kind of congestion. So we have this, and then if it gets really bad, the congestion, this is what you get. And you end up, the congestion creates a heat buildup. And that's when you get a hot liver. And if the liver is hot for too long, it becomes a dry liver, and that is troublesome. Let's go back to dandelion. Super cool plant, dandelion. It's almost time. It's mid-September. It's almost time to dig up the dandelion roots. I always prefer my fall roots because they're higher in inulin, that white sticky substance inside the roots. And that substance really helps balance blood sugars if they're out of balance. They're not as bitter as our spring roots when all that sugary inulin is absorbed by the plant to live through the winter. So spring roots tend to be more bitter, so they push the liver a little harder, whereas fall roots tend to be a little more gentle. But what's super cool about dandelion is the leaf has an effect on helping to clear phase 2 of the detoxification process, while the root has the ability to help clear phase 1 of the detoxification process. So often I use the two together in a formula if I feel the liver needs more support to move toxins into the bile or over to the kidneys to be released. One of the ways I do this often is with healing soups. So this time of year, go out, dig up your dandelion leaf, and there's some nice leaves out there still. And dig up your roots, chop them up, make a nice bone broth, and then put that bone broth in ice cube trays. And every day, take out one ice cube of the bone broth with the dandelion in it, melt it over some hot water, and drink it. And that is your cleanse, and that will help your liver throughout the whole winter. It's a really gentle, soft way to cleanse that's super nourishing. Yeah, and then l- you know, you can, we're always talking about detoxification, like get rid, like as if we're getting rid of toxins, but herbalists will also use that to the advantage, right? So um it, plants are affected by these pathways, and edible cannabis, when we eat it, like if we make cannabis chocolates, they travel through our stomach and then into our liver and then into the bloodstream, and the liver actually creates a stronger form of THC than in when we smoke it, and it goes right into our bloodstream, or we take a tincture and it goes right into the bloodstream. This is a really important thing to understand about cannabis. But I also wonder if the liver doesn't potentiate other constituents, and we just don't really know. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about traditional Chinese medicine because I love traditional Chinese medicine. I am not trained in traditional Chinese medicine. Everything I know about traditional medicine, I have gleaned through reading, observation, and talking to my many friends who are acupuncturists and are very generous with information to me. So when we talk about the liver in traditional Chinese medicine, we're not necessarily talking about the organ the way we're talking about it in traditional Western medicine. We're talking about the energy of the liver. And we're talking about how the liver, how energy flows through the body, and this action of filtration, and this action of being able to combine the elements to create health in the body. That's what we're talking about. So every cell is considered liver in your body. There's not a single cell that does not have that kind of activity. And the energy of the liver is represented by the wood element. Okay. I think this is a really beautiful, beautiful metaphor for the liver, the wood element. Okay. So the wood element, the liver's energy is represented by spring, the time of growth, this rapid growth that happens in the spring. And it's very green. The liver's color is green. The healing color for the liver is green. The liver's energy is the energy of a plant growing through the cracks in cement in the springtime. That, in traditional Chinese medicine, is what the liver's energy is. It's the ability for a plant to break through the soil and reach for the sky. That's the energy of the liver. I love that metaphor. To live, to grow. Again, we're looking at that kind of like expansive energy of Jupiter. Opening, generous, benevolent. That's the energy of the liver. So you'll hear people say a lot of things like, oh, the liver's anger. And that expression comes to us from traditional Chinese medicine. I'm a bit of a word person. So when I hear a word like that, I'm like, And I've lived in different cultures, so I know that like what I think anger is doesn't necessarily mean what another culture thinks anger is. Especially when we're talking about a medicine that's over 2,000 years old and comes from people who live very close to the land in a place that thinks extremely differently than I do in my Western Canadian high-tech world. Okay, so I don't know what that word anger meant to the people who first started exploring the liver as spring. I don't know what anger meant to them. But when I think about the liver and spring and being that creative force that pushes up into life, I think of, what happens when our creativity is limited or suppressed, or even worse, oppressed? We start pushing against it. We get frustrated. If our lives aren't able to grow in a good way, frustration happens. And that frustration gets built up in the liver because the liver wants to live in a good way. Now, if that frustration, that suppression, that life force, creative life force energy is continuously pushed down, the frustration falls into hopelessness. What's the point? And that's called depression. In traditional Western medicine, the liver is the seat of depression. It's the seat of hopelessness. So this is just really interesting to me in that if we want to create wellness in our body mind complex and focus on creating wellness through supporting the liver, that means we have to find some way of engaging in life in a creative, dynamic manner. And that is the medicine the liver needs, is creative expression, just like spring is this generative force that loves to live. I like playing with it that way because, saying, oh, your liver's angry, it suggests that there's something inherently wrong with you. But maybe it's not something's wrong with you. Maybe you need to find circumstances that support you in coming into a creative expression for your life. Okay, so let's go back to our little slideshow. What is this thing? Okay. One of the things I really have gleaned from TCM is this relationship between the liver and the eyes. And I find this very true in clinic. Oops. Oh, yeah. Somehow we get to mugwort. Mugwort is a great plant. It's a great liver plant. It's mildly bitter. It just gently cleanses the liver. But yeah, so this is a total aside. Sorry. um, Mugwort is a very gentle, soft liver plant. Um, and it's interesting, mugwort is also a dream plant. It helps us dream, and it helps us remember our dreams, and it helps us work with our dreams. And dreaming is a big part of health. And when the life is stagnant, when we're frustrated with our life, when we feel stuck, when that creative force that the liver carries is not able to come to expression, sometimes asking for a dream and using plants like mugwort to enhance dreaming will start watering some seeds for a new way of being in your life, a new way of being the liver of life will come into being. And it's sort of, I always think working with plants and dream and the liver in this way is kind of like going through the back door and using the part of our life that isn't necessarily seen in the light of day to help us come deeper into our lives. And again, it's the same thing. If, the liver needs to do that repair, our life needs to do the repair. And that is what we do during sleep and dream. And we must never underestimate the power of those two aspects of life. Okay, the eyes. I will get to the eyes, I promise. Signs of an unhappy liver. Well, there's lots of them. So waking up tired, achy, feeling mildly hungover. That's your liver's not able to do all the processing work it needs. Schisandra is a great plant to use in that situation. Disturbed sleep, either having difficulty falling asleep or waking up at night. I find supporting the liver when there is insomnia is so important. Hormonal imbalances, so heavy bleeding, low libido, high libido, excess cortisol, low cortisol, hormonal imbalance. Doesn't matter. Use support your liver. Hypoglycemia, hyperglycemia, any blood sugar balance, fatigue after eating, support the liver. The liver is as much an organ that supports blood sugar balance as your pancreas. Cystic acne, those big acne, that's definitely liver with often a hormonal imbalance component. Pain in your right shoulder, right neck, and right side of your head. That's always considered liver. Pain below your ribs on the right side and sometimes on the left side. So that's more gallbladder, but again, liver. Disturbed digestion, disturbed bowels. Remember, the bile is all about regulating the microbiome in the bowel, as well as regulating peristalsis. Herbs that support the liver support good flow of bile. Migraine headaches, bruising easily. Dry eyes, red eyes, burning eyes, rashes around your eyes. Anything to do with eyes. In traditional Chinese medicine, the eyes are the furnace, or the chimney of the liver. So if there's a lot of heat in the liver, the heat is coming out through the eyes. So often you'll see people, particularly I see this with like chronic infection or chronic liver disease, they wake up with red eyes. You have to work the liver to resolve that. Repetitive emotions of frustration and depression, or bursts of creativity followed by low periods. That's liver. Always in the future, can't just get present. That's liver again, right? Too much creative energy. Too much, I'm going to live this way, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that. That's like the liver's on overdrive, can't slow down. And then there's your more serious clinical manifestations such as jaundice, ascites, which is a fluid buildup in the abdomen, and it's very specific. Like you'll see waves of fluid underneath the skin in the abdomen. And itchy skin, pay attention to itchy skin. It can be something quite serious. So don't underestimate a chronically itchy skin. A big liver herb is St. John's wort. So red eyes, St. John's wort. Or, that like I have tried so hard to have a good life and nothing works and it's just hopeless. Depression, St. John's wort. It's a liver herb. Vervain is a really great liver herb too. It's one of my favorite herbs, St. John's wort and vervain. And I really like bioregional herbal medicine. So both these plants I grow in my garden here and make medicine with them. Vervain is more for that person who can't stop thinking about the future and is always planning, can't stop planning, and kind of loses track of, the harmony in life, the joy of relationships. It's just kind of like achieve, accomplish, get done, Vervain. And that's overdrive of the to live experience of the liver. A motherwort is really great when this is a great liver herb. I use this herb a lot in sleep formulas. Often you'll hear people talk about vervain as a great sleep herb. This motherwort is one of my favorites. It's very calming to the heart and it's very calming to the liver. And as a liver herb in this way, it's like more like the liver is like scared to live. Like how do I express? It's like, oh, should I grow over there or should I grow over there? Should I do it this way or should I do it that way? Oh, it's more like it's not so much frustration, it's not so much depression, it's more like anxiety. Where am I going? How am I going to live? How am I going to manifest? This is more motherwort. Motherwort nourishes us to grow, to live in a good way. One thing about motherwort is you need to be careful if there's a hypothyroid, but in that situation, it's rather contraindicated. Okay, and we touched on this when we were looking at the microscopic images of the liver, the hepatic portal system. And this is the system that delivers blood carrying the nutrients to the liver that is going to be filtered and then sent into the general circulation to nourish all the cells. And these are veins. These are not arteries. Arteries in our bodies are lined with muscles and they're tough blood vessels. Veins are very thin and they can kind of lose their shape. And when they lose their shape, the blood flow to the liver of the nutrients can be sluggish. And that can cause problems as well. I've worked with people with varicoses in the hepatic portal system, and it's very painful for them. And there's a plant called red root or Ceananthus americanus that is amazing at clearing up varicoses in the hepatic portal system. I just thought I'd throw that in. It's a little aside. It's not directly liver, it's more circulation, but if you ever run into that, it's a good plant to use. And I learned that from Michael Moore, a great American herbalist. And that's the end. Most of all, the liver likes your vegetables. So eat your vegetables and have an apple a day, and your liver will be happy and you will be happy. So that's all I've got. You can find me at abraherbs.com. My email is abraharneson.gmail.com. herbal.com or at gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know I tend to throw a lot of information out, but I just really want to encourage you to think very deeply about the relationship between plants and the body and the microbiome, and learn to use your plants well for the well-being of yourself, your family, friends, and larger community. Okay, whatever you do for the rest of the day or evening, may it nourish and enrich your life.